mayor from that position. I want to refer to this study that Harold Wilson referred to. This was called Powering Our Future Summit from Summit and Wasatch Counties. And Val Draper was a member of that task force with Rocky Mountain Power. And they list in this study, it's online, you can find it pretty easily. They list in this study that Rocky Mountain Power did with Summit County and with Val Draper and I think the Hideout Mayor. So it wasn't Heber City, it wasn't Midway City, right? It was just Val Draper representing the county. They list criteria for where they would place, where Rocky Mountain Power would place transmission lines. And they have pages of criteria. Now Harold mentioned two, right? Existing lines and I think it was existing corridors, right? He mentioned those two. Well, guess what the others are? Guess what the other criteria are that Rocky Mountain Power said they would do? They said that they would not place transmission lines in residential areas, that should be a high priority not to put this kind of transmission line in residential areas. Another thing they suggested in the study is a geotechnical study. A geotechnical study before applying for conditional use permits to build new infrastructure. So I would ask, have any of you or has the planning office seen a geotechnical study for this project? Well, they said that they would do that back in their Powering Our Future Summit, and this is available online. They also said that they should provide environmental, health, and property value impacts. So I'm thinking at a minimum, Rocky Mountain Power should be willing to follow what they suggested they would do in Powering Our Future Summit study with Val Draper. I don't feel like they've even met their own criteria at this point. And so I'm just going to echo what Celeste Johnson said, who is the mayor-elect of Midway and who will be a member of the Heber Light and Power Board come January 2nd after New Year's Day. I'm going to echo what Kellen Potter has asked you to do tonight with Celeste, and she's going to be the chairman of the Heber Light and Power Board come January 2nd. Just pause this, table this, let the newly elected officials take another look at this, and let's make sure that the standards are met that Rocky Mountain Power themselves suggested in that study. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Heidi. What's the date of that?
Let me show it to you right here, sir. I'm thinking it was
2006.
What is it?
2006. 06? Thanks.
State your name for the record.
Larry Gerch. I represent some of the larger landowners in the North Field. I'm only going to address the portion of the line that we're talking about in the Northwest. I work for a big utility company, mentioned Rocky Mountain Power. We're regulated by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. If we were holding this hearing in Washington or Seattle, they'd all be chained to the banisters and things like that. We have improved over
We have this in America.
So I took the time to write up some questions, which I would hope that you would pause and answer. Or I'm not going to take the time to go through them because of the time it would take. A lot of people want to speak. It addresses things such as, you know, who are the permitting agencies, because if you go up to the North Fields, you're probably going to impact some federal agencies, the Army Corps of Engineers, other people like that. It addresses, you know, the eminent domain rights. It addresses easement rights. You're putting in these larger poles. I think Heber Power Light, in all fairness, probably needs to do a much better job of their notification, because they're not notifying people very far in advance, as has been mentioned here this evening. They haven't been really working on the easements until recently. There's a lot of things that happen with electrolysis and cathodic protection that has to happen around these lines. These are big impacts across that they've been mitigating throughout the world. You know, on all these major power lines, these high voltage lines. I don't know if we've addressed those. If they have an application, generally those applications are required to address alternative routing and why they preferred the route that they took. I mean, we submit applications and we have to provide all the environmental impacts, the archaeological impacts. I mean, there's a host of things that I'm not sure have been addressed. And Rocky Mountain Power is regulated by the Public Service Commission of Utah. So at a minimum, they have to have some kind of approval, I would think, besides this board, for them to go forward on the joint line. And, has that criteria been met? And if they involve federal agencies, do they have to go forward with that? So I've addressed some more specific issues that relate to landowners about fences and easements and the vegetation in the North Fields. Frankly, they're trying to go through what they're proposing, and as I appreciate the bypass road proposal, and I'll call it a proposal because all it is a line on a map, and UDOT was going to come back and present some data whether it was even feasible. That line has moved all the way from Mill Road all the way over, keeps migrating to the west. I mean, the commissioner, the mayor, Beaver signed an oath of blood that it would never go past Spring Creek and here, and then now we're over to Southfield Road, and so we keep, moving over. And so it is a proposal. It's not necessarily an approved utility corridor as we get up in there. We're not opposed to utility lines. We appreciate the problem as landowners. We're willing to work with it, but we're saying there's a host of questions that need to be addressed, and I would hope that you would take those time. There's extra copies for people who want them. I'll leave them on the table, that they would, that you would go through those and somebody would then prepare an answer for those.
Larry, a couple of you here are large landowners that this probably would impact. What do you think about burying it through your property?
I would much prefer the notion of burying it.
Rather than the poles?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That was the question.
And you can get costs. I mean, if you want to get into the costs, I mean, the industry has publications that talk about every inch diameter of pipe and type of soils and what it costs. So that stuff's readily available. That's not a leap of faith to get that. So,
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Larry.
My name is York Vister. I live in Midway. I've learned in my years that if you want to get something done like your group or something, you want to convince other people, you create fear. And that's what part of the presentation tonight, for the reason for these wires, was a fear that we will run out of power, and of course none of us want that. What I find interesting is electricity in this valley has been here over 100 years. The solution that has been proposed by Heater Light Power, Rocky Mountain Power, is a century-old solution. We live in the 21st century, and we have different needs, and we have different technologies. So whether to put the high-tension lines through the valley, on top of the valley, or below the valley, needs to be rethought, as Chris has said. Everybody's asking, well, what's the cost going to be? There are technologies available that you can use existing grids, store power locally, create power locally through solar, and we're actually in a very good solar area. And you put it back into the grid as needed, and so those 6 or 7 or 8, 9 days that you need that extra power a year, if you have enough people in the valley that have these local storage batteries, it goes back into the grid when it needs to be done. And none of this stuff puts more load onto the existing system, but we can do that because of the technology we have. So I just want to reiterate that we do need to rethink this. We need to think beyond the box. We don't need to think with 100-year-old technology, and we might not have any of this problem if we proceed that way. And the other, well, that's it. I'm done.
I think we've pretty much got an idea of what's going on here. We've had a lot of good comments tonight, and I think the commission has absorbed all this. If there's still a few that have got something that hasn't been said here, we would entertain that. But I think we've got a good handle on what the group is thinking here tonight. So if there's still someone that would like to come up and say something different than what's been said, we'd entertain that now.